one who understands the complexities of this ambitious cinematic masterpiece?
Hey, it's me, Maxwell Atoms. Thanks for stopping by to watch the second episode of Billy and Mandy versus the entertainment industry. Today we're talking to Gavrilo Gnatovich, who did Longhair and Doubledome, which was the third pilot that was aired alongside Whatever Happened to Robot Jones and The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy in Cartoon Network's Big Pick Weekend. This was a Zoom meeting recorded between Gav and myself in late 2024. Next episode, we're going to have a 2-year time jump to the modern times. But for now, let's cross our fingers and hope everything sounds okay.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing to do. Ultimately, this is where we're at, right? Where you can be your own creator. It's actually a good thing, but there's also a large pool. I mean, I think when you're pitching a show, there's a smaller pool. I mean, you have to have some reputation. You have to have some, credentials.
Mm-hmm.
And now you can just put anything. You got. I mean, it always cracks me up. You get to a tutorial online, and it's this 7-year-old kid going, "Okay, now I'm going to show you how to work in After Effects," and it's like, where are we?
Right.
So it's a weird world out there.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Yeah, it seems to be getting weirder by the day in some ways. Well, just for the purposes of the video, can you tell me a little bit just about yourself and in general, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people don't know a lot about me. Not that I was under the radar, but I had a different kind of career than a lot of people. I started out as a painter, worked for a photographer in Chicago. Through that, ended up meeting Richard Williams and corresponded with him for a number of years when I was quite young, and got interested in it. He was a great teacher. I always thought, like, over a couple of beers and burgers, I kind of got his DVD in condensed form, and worked many times. Didn't work with him, but was able to correspond with him, show him my work, and kind of get to a point where I became an animator, I guess is what you can say. And then I made a couple of animated films, and then really started in the commercial industry. I like the idea of being able to change. I remember Dave Wasson once told me that it's like, you better really love your show because you're going to be doing it all the time.
Oh yeah, and not just while you're at work, I think, but all the time.
Right, all the time. And so, commercials allowed me to change, and I like that change. And since I had a fine arts background, I was able to do a lot of fine arts techniques and other things like that. But then again, what we were talking about previously, the animation industry and commercials started to go downhill. And so I needed another outlet. And that's when I started pitching to the networks. And that's how I ended up with Longhair and Doubledome being in the Big Pick. So.
And how did that happen? How did you end up working with Cartoon Network?
So Linda Semensky I met Linda, I think in 1991. I had done a short film called Prehistorical Days, which was about cavemen. I'm kind of a cave, it's kind of my thing. Cavemen is kind of my thing. And we kind of broke off for a while. I was, focusing on my commercial career, but in 1998, I believe, I contacted her and had found out about the cartoon thing and decided to pitch a show to her. So went down to it. She was in Atlanta at the time. I think she was always in Atlanta. I don't think she ever went to LA. And pitched the show to her over lunch. Gave her a log line, and she said, "That's a show." And so that's how it all started. It was probably the easiest pitch I've ever had. she just kind of, she heard the log line and went, "That's it, that's good." And
Yeah,
so
yeah. Same
developed.
for me.
Oh, good, good. I mean, I think that's what it counts. I think it's really important to be able to quickly, and it's that elevator pitch idea, or however you can, I mean, as quickly as you can, condense it to the point where you're not explaining, and then this character does this, and then this guy comes over. It's like the concept shows, the low concept, the being multiple ideas, the Game of Thrones doesn't necessarily work in our industry. So, having a high concept, very succinct idea is really the way to go about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Linda Sminsky was fantastic. I think she was sort of instrumental in getting all of that rolling, really.
Yeah, she definitely did. I mean, they had a nice crew back then. Jay Bastian, I know was a big fan of your show, and Amy Handler, Khaki Jones, who ended up actually moving out to LA, and I'm sure, as you know,
Hmm.
and I'm sure you worked with Khaki.
Never directly, but she's wonderful. I love Khaki.
Yeah, she's a good person. Good. So a lot of good people were there, and it was a good place. I mean, I love the Burbank studio. I would go out there every once in a while and visit and pitch. I pitched to Heather. I pitched to I was constantly pitching there for a while after 2000, pretty
Hmm.
much pitching until about 2000. I can't remember. Um, so it was it was a great place. Good friends with Brian, and it was a great place to go. Beautiful studio. It's a shame that it's gone.
Yeah, agreed. Uh, as far as Longhair and Doubledome go, and you being a caveman guy, like it's always weird to ask somebody where an idea comes from, because where does any idea come from? But were there any particular inspirations, or as for Longhair and Doubledome as characters or as a show?
I mean, Longhair and Doubledove started. The whole idea actually started as an entirely different idea with two different characters, same names, but it was actually a short film I was planning on doing, and a very dark one, by the way. Kind of, and then it kind of morphed into the television show, so that more of it kind of morphed into this whole idea of Longhair and Doubledome. The general concept was that they're the first in everything. Okay, they were the cavemen that did the first everything. Now, the pilots, unfortunately, I think got caught up in the traditional wheel fire things that were kind of the network's request, where things like the first money, or banks, or manners, or all those other ideas, which I actually were more quirky, and I enjoyed, never got to see the light of day. But that's how it morphed. It just kind of morphed. I think it's one of those things that, I mean, songwriters say this, that sometimes you're not entirely in control of it. These things come to you, and they kind of essence. There's kind of I do a lot of meditation when I'm trying to do creative work, and it just happens. It's like a movie in your head, and it's really a wonderful thing when you work on being a creative person, which I'm sure you have, that you can really generate these things. You can generate ideas out of basically nothing. It's almost as if, I mean, they songwriters talk about the universe coming to them, and it's like they don't even have the idea. It's the universe that's providing it. I don't know if it's that crazy, but I like to be a part of it in some way, shape, or form.
Oh, sure, sure. Yeah, I think there's sort of, getting the idea like that, but I think in reality you aren't fully ever in control of it because it is such a
I
like
mean,
a process, really,
how is it for you?
just having ideas or
I mean, how did the concept of Bill and Mandy and all come to you? I mean,
it's hard to pin down. The characters sort of slowly formed over a decade or more. Like when I was in elementary school, I was drawing Billy comics, and he was a very different character back then. And I was always kind of into skeletons and spooky stuff, and it all just sort of I did a college pilot that was that had Billy and Mandy in it, but no Grim Reaper, and uh, they actually ended up weirdly enough in a different show idea completely called Milkman, which was a superhero show. And Lindy was like, "Well, we're not doing superhero stuff, but like we like these two kids. Who are they?" And I was like, "Oh, weird. They're from my college pilot." But I felt like they needed a third ingredient, so that's where the Grim Reaper ended up. And I don't know how that happened. Like that was a terrible idea. Because why would anyone pick that up? But somehow it happened. So
Stuff happens, and then you got to make it. Sometimes it's it sounds like in your case, you almost have to make it. You have to make it work. You have to figure out how to
yeah,
make.
yeah, like you were saying, adaptations and
Yeah, so you just kind of form what you had. I was always a proponent of very warm media. I mean, I think it's better being cool and being the whole superhero genre is kind of cool media to me, and things like I just wanted it to be fun and silly, and that's what I think works for kids media myself. So that's what I grew up with. I grew
yeah,
up watching Looney Tunes and really enjoyed that kind of stuff. So it was that's what I wanted to do. So
cool. How was Longhair and Doubledome made? Like you weren't actively in Cartoon Network Studio, so
we made it. I had my own studio. We had about at that time around 15 people that worked there. Sometimes freelance, sometimes whatever. I was lucky enough to meet up with. I had some great people working for me. I had some inkers that were absolutely phenomenal. Todd Myers and Dave Fadan were the two major guys who were just remarkably talented. I was in Cleveland, Ohio. That's where I've traveled around a lot, but my studio was in Cleveland. And I'm from there originally. Yeah, we did it. We did the first pilot. We ended up, because we got two pilots in the second go around in 2003, we had to go overseas, and that was not a great situation. I mean, it was very difficult. I think it would have been easier if we were in LA, but from Cleveland, it was a lot more difficult to deal with in general. So the second pilot of Longhair and Doubledome, I would have redone if it would have gone through the thing. It would have gotten redone because it was not. We just couldn't get the communication right. We tried many times to try to show them how to do things, and they did it the way they wanted to do it, and then it just got to the point where it's what we got to do. So, I was not as finding a studio overseas. There's many of them. All of them do very nice tests sometimes, and then don't follow up. You end up with the C team or the B team or the D team, and that's always a problem in animation. It's a problem in
yeah.
the.
And I think a lot of times but at least in my experience, you're stuck with the two or three studios that have relationships with your sort of master studio. So you have
Sure.
a couple of choices, and if beyond that, it's going to be a fight.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine being in the situation. See, the one great thing about my career is I've always been independent and autonomous. I've worked in studios, not for very long, typically. You can take that however you want. um, it's I'm a better independent than I am probably an employee. I have a lot. I'm very opinionated. I believe in what I do, and that sometimes rubs studios the wrong way. Although I try to be as good an employee as I possibly can, it's hard when you're creative. When you're creative, you want to spout your ideas, and I learned later in my career to shut up, which is an interesting concept because you don't think that works, but it kept me employed longer.
Well, yeah, I do think there's a certain virtue to keeping your mouth shut. And if you have something planned that you're like, well, this may not go over well, just waiting until you've done it. Well, I guess it's the asking for forgiveness rather than permission. But
Yeah, I mean, we had a rule in our studio, which I always liked, was a rule in my studio was that any creative idea was a gift. And that basically if the person took that gift, the director at the time took the gift, whether it was me or Todd or anyone else, that basically it was their idea, that they, it's theirs. They have it. You gave it. And we always said, if you don't want to give a gift, don't give it. If you think there's such a great creative idea, don't give it. Just keep it. Keep it for yourself. Keep it for your own work. Keep it for what you want to do. And I always thought that that was a good way of thinking about it. I tried to do that myself when I worked for other people. I didn't always succeed. Studios, I see it. My career is very different. You're in LA. You've been in LA. I've been all around in the country, and it's very interesting to find out what studios know and what they don't know. And that's really an odd thing about my career is when you find out something that they don't know that's pretty elementary, you go, holy shit, they don't know this. It's like you tell them and then they're mad at you for telling them. So,
Right.
I don't know how it works in the studio system. I've never really been a studio person, so I don't know how did you navigate that? What was it like for you? I'm curious.
I got lucky in that I had Jay Bastian, who is a rational human being that you can have a conversation with, where
Mhm.
I feel like a lot of executives, you just sort of get, the company line or they're not going to budge on things. But with Jay, it was always sort of a negotiation. So if I got like notes I didn't agree with, we could eventually find a path, generally. Very rarely he would put his foot down or I would put my foot down and we would have to go back to square one. But I got lucky in that I had good executives. I think it could have gone very differently.
Yeah.
Just
Um,
out of curiosity, did the rights revert back to you?
um, that was an interesting problem. The my contract, I believe, never really had that clause in it. So it was. I don't know if you're aware. Right now, I'm actually doing a graphic novel of Longhair and Doubledome, and yeah, I had to go back. It was Brian was still there. Thankfully, Brian has been a really great advocate of mine, and we worked it out. Brian worked it out for me because it never did get reverted to me. And when asked about it, it was like, we don't know. And so eventually, obviously, with this many years gone by, I think it was a pretty easy thing. I don't think it was very difficult. Um, but yeah, I have the rights.
Oh, good,
Not like I
good.
can do
I'm glad to
very
hear it.
much with them. I'm running out of time, but I'll do what I can. And
Sure.
that's
Even so,
well,
like I hear, I've never actually tried to get the rights to anything back because it just seems so futile. But I've heard stories that you have
you should
to
be able to. I'm pretty sure you can get the rights.
I've heard stories that you have to pay back the costs incurred by whatever the
Oh,
development
really?
was. So you may have to pay back the cost of making a pilot, which is beyond most
Yeah,
mortals.
that's a large sum of money. Not so much anymore, but back then, yes, it was a large sum of money. I
Right.
mean, we did our short traditionally. So that was there was no digital back then. And doing 7 minutes, 7:20 um, in a year was a lot for a small studio. We did it. We had no problem doing it. When we had two pilots, the following iteration, skipped a year, and then we were in production on two pilots. Then that's when we had to go overseas. There was just no way of doing it in house.
Right.
Uh, so, um, but and the second pilot was doomed right from the start. We had pitched it, and it was a pilot called Maktar. It was basically, and So Maktar was pitched well before I even knew anything about Invader Zim, and then Invader Zim comes out while we're in production on Maktar, and it's pretty dang close to the same story. It's not as angry as Zim was, it's more nerdy and whatever, but basically the same concept. And so I was like, that's doomed. We're done. We're done. I mean, this has not a shot. And during the time that happened, it was very odd because the network kept trying to push Maktar. And I was just like, why are you doing this? This is not going to work. I mean, it's not going to work. We tried to push Longhair and Doubledome, obviously for a lot of reasons, partially because we had such great focus group numbers. Our focus group numbers were through the roof.
I remember that. Also, like your icon, intimidating.
So it was really odd. We felt like we felt confused. I don't know if it would have been different for us if we'd have been in LA. I do know when the internet vote came out, I kind of felt, for the big pick, they had that idea that instead of just choosing that they were going to have an internet vote. I knew then that we were in trouble. Only because we're in Cleveland. I mean, we're Cleveland, Ohio, and it's LA against Cleveland. I mean, that's basically, you got 2 shows in LA and 1 show in Cleveland. And how am I going to fight that? So it is what it is. There's been, there's always, there's always this issue with creators and networks, creators and executives. You hear it through in every movie industry commentary, everything. And, it's a little bit of a mystery to me why it doesn't work better, to tell you the truth. And the lack of trust in creative sometimes is a really odd thing, or even trusting the audience is a really odd thing. And that's what it was for me. It's like, okay, here's our audience. Our audience loves the show. Like you said, I didn't know that you knew our numbers, but our numbers were really high. And so what else are we supposed to deliver? I mean, what else am I supposed to deliver as a creative? And, what was the issue? And I don't know. That there's never been any communication to me as to why. The last communication to me, and I'll share this, it's not something I like to share, to tell you the truth, was a network executive telling me, and I won't say who it was, saying, your show's too smart. It's like The Simpsons. That's how they passed on the show. That was the final word on it. And it's like that.
And the sad, the sad, sick irony.
What are you saying here? Like, not that Longhair and Doubledome would ever be that. I don't expect it to be. I'm not that. I don't have that much of an ego to think that. But I would have liked to seen it have a chance. That's the thing I probably regret the most, is that it didn't get its chance. So that's the way it is. And part of that whole idea of producing, what was it, 10 shorts or 8 to 10 shorts, every year, and then picking whoever wins, is kind of like a mass of work that it's like a basket. You're just throwing a bunch of creative in a basket and then tossing one out and saying, okay, go. That's an odd way of doing business to me. It's a little bit.
You forget. I forget that I didn't, and you didn't know about the big pick from the beginning. That it was just something that manifested along the way.
Yeah.
I had forgotten.
You didn't know that?
No, I didn't know. No, I just, at one point they were like, oh, by the way, we're gonna have an online vote, and it's weirdly sort of proto reality TV. But I just remember that made me so sick to my stomach, because I was like, oh, now it's like a whole different game that I don't understand.
Yeah, and it's a game, and to tell you, and to be honest about it, I don't think it's a game they understood. It was so early even in the internet, to tell you the truth, that it is something that I don't think is I mean, I don't think there's better ways to judge a show. Okay, there's better ways to judge a show than to show I mean, there's just better ways. I mean, and I mean, I had a lot of respect for your show. I thought your show was good. Your pilot was exceedingly funny, which is really what it needs to be. The voice talents were great. I enjoyed a lot of aspects of that whole thing. I remember it well.
Thank you.
But you know, not all those shows. I remember. It's just that kind of thing is not. And I don't mean to besmirch it, although I don't think it matters anymore because there's no. It's like but it's like for instance. I went out to meet one of the creators of one of the shows in LA on one of my trips out there before this all got decided, and had already known that who was chosen. I knew that had been chosen, you had been chosen, and that Greg Miller had been chosen for Robot Jones. And I always wanted to meet this guy because I knew a lot about him and I thought he was a great artist and everything. I went out to LA and I met him and we were talking and I said, hey, I thought your pilot was great. And I'm sorry to tell you that, I'm sorry that you didn't make it. I said, I'm sorry you didn't make it. He didn't know. So it was like, oh my God, it's like, it's like, what? They didn't tell him that he was not a part of the Big Pick. And I just, that's how I mean, luckily I'm still friends with the guy, but that's how my relationship with him started, which was not on the top of the heap. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
So, interesting. A lot of interesting stories. That's the one thing animation does. Animation careers, man. There's some stories we could tell. I'm sure there's stories you could tell.
Oh yeah,
just like some nutty things.
It's a weird business.
It's a weird business. Some crazy stuff happens. I mean, for instance, when I was finished with my first film, now I had been corresponding with Richard Williams a lot, and in finishing my film and showing him clips and blah blah. And he was in the middle of working on Roger Rabbit, and I started looking for a job after I was all done and whatever else I had, and took my reel out and I went out to Disney to be interviewed and they said, well, who else have you been talking to? And I said, well, I talked to Richard last week. He said, you talked to Richard? Said, what's going on? Did he say anything about the production? So it's like they're asking this 20-year-old kid, like, what's happening with Roger Rabbit? He won't return our calls. You actually talked to him? How did you get hold of him? So it's like, yeah. Well, Richard's dodging you. I hate to tell you, but that's something that he's allowed to do. So at any rate, that's kind of the weird things that happen in our industry sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I just got a notification that Zoom's gonna hang up on us in about 10 minutes.
Okay.
So if I happen to go blank, that's probably what's happened. But I think we're nearing probably the end anyway.
Okay.
Do you have any favorite?
I've talked your off enough.
No, this has all been fantastic, actually. Like,
Let me ask you, how did Maxwell Atoms happen?
that was my middle name is Maxwell, and my first name is Adam, and my dad was always called me Maxwell. There were some people at work that called me Maxwell, and I was into punk rock, and I was like, well, I got this one chance to choose my own punk rock name, so.
Go. All right. Did you play? Are you?
No, I can't play anything. I used to play the piano when I was a kid, but it's gotten to the point where I've forgotten chopsticks, and middle C is shaky.
Yeah, I don't even know where middle C is. It's in the middle,
somewhere,
and it's a C, but I don't know
exactly.
why. Got it.
Well, before we wrap up, do you have any just thoughts about generally how the industry has changed over the last few years?
My hope is I have seen many ups and downs in the animation industry. There's probably more venues for animation than ever before, ever in my lifetime. It's kind of surprising to me to see a wane in it, to tell you the truth. I think it's a very powerful medium. It's unfortunate that it's that it's gone the way that it has. I think, I'm hoping that it rebounds. I mean, it always has. There's always this kind of ebb and flow. It happened throughout my career. There were things that went away. Now, commercial animation has never really rebounded. Television animation, I don't know if it's going to rebound. There's still shows out there, but there's so many services, the streaming services, there's kind of a dissolution of the whole thing. And we've kind of gotten to the point where there's so much media, it's hard to get an audience. And I think that's creating certain problems, especially because animation is difficult to produce. People are not patient. They'd rather have it like this, and animation is not a medium that goes like this. So patience has hurt animation as well, because it's not a patient art. It takes time. To do it right, it takes time. It takes money. Not always the amount of money that they think, but they tend to say, well, it's too expensive, we don't want to do it. And it's like, well, okay, but it depends on the art itself. It depends on the artist. It depends on the people who are involved too. They'll pay multiple money for certain things to get done, and they'll pay very little for animation to get done. It's an odd thing. It's been a part of our life. It's been a part of my life all my life. Although I do miss traditional animation, and I miss it because it's tangible. I mean, if you saw my studio right now, it's like there's artwork all over the floor. I'm going through all my cells because I used to have I had 70 to 90 banker boxes of cells. I mean, all this artwork that I produced, and it's kind of nice to go through. One of the greatest things ever in a traditional studio is when you had painted cells and you're able to flip them over and see the finished art for the first time. So that's the thing I miss about it in general, is that everything was like, you just saw the whole artwork form, as opposed to working with finished images, which is what it is now. You kind of work with finished image. So I do think there's some great things about it. It can be produced faster, but there's some things that I miss about it too. And I'll always be stuck in that realm. So I'm not the best proponent of digital media. I worked in it for a long time. I've dropped, there's my
I feel like I've never quite 100% adapted. Like, it's always still such a joy to sit down and draw on paper.
Yeah, and I still do. That's kind of what I do. I've gone back to it. You can't finish, in paint, but you can finish in Photoshop, and that's about as digital as I get. So, I hope it returns. It had some possibilities that I thought, the Spider-Man art was really fantastic. I thought, Klaus was pretty amazing. I was kind of surprised that got rushed at the end and thrown out. And it's like, guys, come on. I mean, this is not reality TV. This is not even a movie. I mean, this is not Dune. Okay. This is a bevy of people trying to produce something special. Let them do it, please, because you're just going to kill it. It's just like Thief and the Cobbler with Richard Williams. They killed it. They murdered it. Okay, so don't do that. Don't. It's not a good idea, because everyone, guess what? Your audience recognizes it. They see that you murdered it. Okay, it's a murder scene. It's a crime scene, and you should be convicted. That's it. And so we've been hurt by some of the judgments that the networks, the producers, the big companies have forced upon us, by making not a complete, idea. It's like, let us work, give us the opportunity to work, and then see what happens. See if the audience grows, instead of cutting it down and stopping things before they come to fruition, and then hoping it'll still be okay. Because it's not. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Sorry, animation takes a long time. Sorry. Get used to it. Shut the fuck up and sit in your office, make your $1 million, and let us work and see what happens when you really give an animator an idea to fruition. Let them work. Let them finish. I'm sure you ran into that throughout your career.
Yeah, the schedules.
Hurry up. There is no disclaimer on the bottom of an animation screen that says this was done in a week or this was done in 8 months. There's no disclaimer. The reason it looks like this is because we were rushed at the end. There's no disclaimer. So why put us in that situation?
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, it's crazy.
That's the industry. Sorry, I got a little angry there.
No, I get angry all the time. Well, before we go, can you talk a little bit about what you're doing these days and maybe the Longhair and Doubledome comic?
Sure, I'm working on a graphic novel. I'm also working on a couple animated short films, independent films. One of them which I've worked on for quite a long time now. I hope to, and some of it is again that time frame. Like the storyboard for one of these films I'm working on. I've worked on it for a year, and been able to really craft it. The idea really, and it's not something in other words, really spend the time with it. Really get the idea to where it works. Really make sure that I'm not looking at it and going, not the best. So I'm working on those things right now. It's making me happy, and that's what I do.
Awesome. Where can people find you on the internet?
I'm in the ether of the internet. That's where people can find me. I'm out there in different places. That's about where I'm at. So yeah. I think people have an easier time finding when I'm done with some of these projects, because I'll probably promote them and be out there. I'll probably be out there and doing a Comic-Con or whatever else.
I hope so. I would love to go to a Comic-Con, and I would love to see you at a Comic-Con.
Okay, I would love to see you. It's been a pleasure meeting you, by the way.
Yeah, you too. You too.
All right, everybody, that was it. Thanks for stopping by. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I guess the algorithm likes that kind of stuff, and you know what? Frankly, so do I. All right, see you next time.
This is the end. Smash your television.